Before we get started, I want to encourage you to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications so that you don't miss any of the content that is released by Go Collect. And if you're interested, head over to Regie Collects here on YouTube. Regie here, your friendly neighborhood bodybuilder and comic book collector and the host of the Go Collect speculation video, and I want to welcome you to another one of our episodes. In this episode, I am going to spend some time talking about 5 blog posts that have been sent in to Go Collect by bloggers all across this country. And I will tell you that there is some good content that is going to pique your curiosity. But before we get going with the blog post, I want to take a moment to do a little bit of housekeeping. The folks over at Go Collect have asked me to remind all of you that the fees associated with the Go Collect service are actually going to be going up on August 3rd. And this is a service that I've actually been buying for the last couple of years because I like knowing what the sales data and the FMV is associated with the graded comics that I buy. And if this is something that you want to be able to track as you buy and sell comics, you may also want to try to lock in your rates. The Go Collect fees are going to be going up, as I mentioned, on August 3rd. But if you have your subscription set up and don't let your subscription lapse, you actually have the ability to lock in the current rates for life. That is essentially what Go Collect is saying, is that they will not raise your rates if you don't let your subscription lapse. So if you have it, you may want to go ahead and sign up for that annual membership so that you are protected. And if you haven't yet signed up for the service, you definitely want to look into it and see whether this is something that you want and or need. And then go ahead and lock it down if you decide that you need it. You want to lock it down before the rates actually go up. And if you haven't, for whatever reason, actually had an opportunity to experience the functionality associated with Go Collect, if you head over to my website, regiecollects.com, and you go to the partners page, there is actually a code there that you can use to get 30 days of free access. And mind you, you might not want to wait the full 30 days because if you do, you'll miss the deadline of August 3rd. But you will have at least a couple of days by the time you see this video to actually play around with the service to get a feel for the features and the functionality. Again, I've been paying for this for the last couple of years because I find that having this information allows me to make more informed decisions about comics that I buy and or sell. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the first blog post. This first blog post is actually a pretty solid one, and it is, I think, the second one that we've actually covered here on the channel. Now, why do I like this blog post? I like it because it's really about hindsight. The way that this blogger has essentially written this post is that they are looking in the rearview mirror and they are asking if they had bought one book versus another book, which book over time would have been the better investment to make. And while we in real time don't have the benefit of hindsight, by using some of the data from the Go Collect database, this blogger is essentially making an argument here that, you know, there are winners, there are losers, and in real time, you might need to think about some of what has happened in the past in order to essentially forecast, if you will, what might happen in the future. And hindsight is indeed 2020, but thankfully, because of this blogger, we can all see very clearly. In this blog post, the blogger is comparing 2 really awesome characters and books. That being Ghost Rider versus Luke Cage. And he is specifically looking at Hero for Hire #1 versus Marvel Spotlight number 5. Both of these books were introduced in the summer of 1972, and over the last several decades, both of these books have performed incredibly well. And as I mentioned, the blogger basically does a comparison in which he looks at similar time periods of performance for these two books and evaluates not just the percent increase but also the dollar increase of these two books over time. And I'm not going to tell you which one of these books performs incredibly well. I will, however, tell you both of these books performed incredibly well. And so if you are lucky enough to have bought these books in the past, hopefully you've held on to them because they have performed incredibly well. And again, I think that there may be some telltale signs here. If you look at these books, if you look at the timing of when these books kind of took off, I think that there may actually be some indications here that we can actually use for the future in terms of how much time does it take for an awesome character to reach maturity so as to have a book that is considered a really valuable book. And there are some patterns that I'm actually starting to see, and part of them are outlined in this blog post. If you have a couple of minutes, I would encourage you to check out this blog post because I believe that it's an interesting, well-written blog post with some awesome data, but it might also help you as you move into the future and continue to speculate on comics. This next blog post is a really interesting one because it is a thought-provoking post in and of itself, but the blogger actually takes a look at two comic book series and a TV show that are also very thought-provoking. And the blogger makes a point that we in the United States and in some cases parts of the world are in a transitional time. And the comics that the blogger talks about are, in his mind, well positioned for the time that we find ourselves in right now. The blogger specifically talks about Alan Moore's Watchmen series and recommends that if you have not read this series, you might want to pick it up because, again, the blogger feels like this is a series that is really about the days and times in which we are living in right now. And if you haven't read the series, you may want to check it out because it's dense, no doubt about that, but it is also very interesting. The blogger also talks about the follow-on series that came after The Watchmen, specifically being the Doomsday Clock, a series that was written by Jeff Johns. And again, here the blogger points out that this is one that you want to take a look at because it too is very much fitting with the times that we're finding ourselves in right now. And then the blogger goes on to say that you want to read these two series, but you also want to check out the HBO series based upon The Watchmen that actually picks up 30 some odd years after the comic books and makes the argument here that the TV show actually brings to life certain elements that people may have missed from the comics themselves. There is no doubt that there is a lot that is transformational about the times that we are living in now. Some good, some bad. Transformational nevertheless. And if you're looking for some good comics and maybe even a good TV show to watch and to read, you may want to look into what I've talked about in this blog post. The link to this post is down in the description, so start with that and then go read the comics and watch the TV show. I am so excited about this next blog post. Well, technically, I'm excited about the news that is contained in the blog post, not so much the blog post itself, even though it is well written. I'm excited because the Grifter is coming back. The Grifter from the Wildcats, created by Jim Lee back in the 90s, is coming back. The Grifter is going to be in Batman 101. I am thoroughly excited about this. I am a huge Wildcats fan, a huge Jim Lee fan, and I was thoroughly excited when I heard that he was actually coming back. And there are a lot of details out there that are still kind of up in the air where we don't quite know what's going to happen. But it's my understanding that the Grifter is going to be coming back. He is going to be working for Wayne Enterprises. He's going to be basically a security kind of guy. I'm thinking working with Batman, but again, I'm not quite clear on specifically what role he is going to play. But I'm excited, and I will tell you, I am going to be picking up Batman 101 to read it, and I'm going to be keeping my fingers and toes crossed, because I would like to see the Grifter play a much bigger role than what he has played over the last few years, ever since, DC acquired the property of the Wildcats by buying up Jim Lee's organization. So fingers crossed that they actually make some magic with this character, and this isn't something that just, happens once and then goes away. Some of the covers that I've seen of this Batman issue are also really, really fantastic. So if you're interested in reading more about this character, more about Wildcats issue number 1, which is a book that I have, or even some of the other books in which the Grifter appears, you may want to take a look at this blog post. The link is down in the description. So over the last few weeks and months, several bloggers have actually touched on this subject. They have touched on the subject of the future of Marvel. And many of these blog posts that have come out here from Go Collect have actually highlighted some of those up and coming characters that will potentially be the future for Marvel. This blog post that we are about to talk about right now essentially highlights those characters all over again, but there's some really cool things, if you will, that have happened with this book. Because of when the book came out, it was not widely ordered, which means that there could be some really great potential here to pick up these books, because they feature some awesome characters that will be the future, and the print run is really, really small. The book that I'm talking about is Outlawed number 1, and this is, again, a comic that actually came out just as the shelter-in-place order was coming out for many parts of the country. In fact, it was released on March 18th, 2020, just before the shutdown. And the blogger in this blog post specifically highlights that you may want to consider picking up Outlawed issue number 1, specifically the 1 in 50 Rudd variant. The blogger highlights that the print run associated with this comic was only about 27,000 copies. And if you are able to pick up the 1 in 50 variant, that would mean that that print run of that book might be somewhere around 500 copies or so. And again, small print runs, ratio variants, smaller print runs potentially could result in some high values associated with these comics as we move into the future. Certainly there's no guarantees, but if you pay attention to some of the numbers and some of the things that have been happening, it kind of sort of makes sense that it could potentially happen here. One of the other books that the blogger talks about is Outlawed issue number 1, specifically the Wrap Around variant. And this is just a really awesome cover that highlights some of these characters that, as we've alluded to, could be the future stars of the Marvel universe. And so again, this is a really cool thing, because cover appearances of really awesome characters is the way that you want to kind of go. And I'm being super cryptic here because I have not told you who these characters are. It is all purposeful, and it is all designed to get you to check out this blog post. The link to it, as are all the others that I've discussed in this video, are down in the description. So there you have it. We have reached the end of another recap. I hope that you all have enjoyed this video, and if you did, I want to encourage you to hit the thumbs up button, leave a comment behind so we can mix it up in the comment section. And I also want to invite you to come back next week when we get to do this all over again.